May 31st, 1967, New York. A woman knocks on the door of a friend she hasn't seen in a few days. Less than 24 hours later, an unidentified woman is lured into a grave in Ennis, Ireland, 3,000 miles away. What's the connection? The Cliffs of Moher are one of Ireland's top tourist destinations. With an estimated 1.5 million visitors in 2018, people have come from all over the world to see the cliffs. They're beautiful on a good day and amazing on a bad day. They are also a site of great sadness. There are suicide awareness signs everywhere placed by the Samaritans charity. Some of the deaths are accidents, others intentional. All of them are tragedies. On the 24th of May 1967, the body of a young woman washed ashore at Doolan Strand. She had been beaten and fallen a great height onto rocks before being swept out to sea, ultimately washing ashore. Most likely she had fallen or been thrown from the cliffs. She probably died immediately on impact. A small mercy. None of the locals came forward to identify the woman. She was a stranger. She was in her late 20s with excellent teeth, soft manicured hands, and a tan. These would have been extremely rare in local Irish at the time, suggesting she had come from abroad. Her clothes were American made, which narrowed down the search, but not by much. A reconstruction of her face was placed in newspapers with no luck. The unnamed woman was buried on the 1st of June. Only a handful of Gardaí attended. On Garda Síochána quickly found two leads. 2 men and a woman had landed a private helicopter in the Aran Islands the day before the body was found. This was extremely unusual, and people were quick to point the finger at the pilot and his friend. However, they and the woman with them were all found and identified. An unusual coincidence, but nothing more. The second, and more concrete, lead was a receptionist in Lisbon, who identified her as a guest who had checked out the 23rd, the day before the body was found. However, once again, the woman was found and cleared. There was a third and final lead, which led to more solid evidence. A local woman saw the lights of a car in a field close to the cliffs on the early hours of the 23rd. A search of the area near O'Brien's Tower found a blood-stained gold bracelet and a shoe that fit the woman. Both were American-made. On the morning of May 31st, someone knocked on the door of her friend and co-worker, Virginia Domenech. 52-year-old Virginia had failed to appear at her job as a social worker for 2 days, and no one was answering the phone. The woman who knocked on the door, her name has never been revealed, so we will call her Sarah going forward, for simplicity's sake. Sarah contacted the building supervisor, who admitted he had not seen Virginia in several days. Virginia's brother, Juan Goya, took the next flight from Puerto Rico to New York to assist in the search. The apartment was clean, with food in the fridge and no sign of a struggle. It looked as if she had simply stepped out to run some errands and never returned. They did find a postcard from Virginia's daughter, Maria. Maria was touring Europe and was due to return on the 31st of May. The postcard, dated the 22nd of May, said she was in Paris and would send her mother a letter at a later date. No such letter was found. Both Maria and Virginia had lived in the apartment for about 5 years. They were both social workers and, by all accounts, were very pleasant people. The last confirmed sighting of Virginia was May 31st. Maria had failed to appear at JFK Airport on that same day. Maria's boyfriend Roberto had been planning to pick her up, but she never appeared, and Roberto had been unable to get in contact with other people in the family to see what had happened. A second search of the apartment found a locked drawer that had been missed the first time around. This drawer had been ransacked by a person or persons unknown. Someone who knew exactly what they wanted. Lieutenant Francis Sullivan assembled the evidence and determined that Maria had come to harm abroad, sometime between the 22nd and 31st of May, and the killer had then gone to New York to eliminate Virginia and destroy the missing letter that might have named him. Maria had traveled more than $6,000 in traveler's checks, which is equivalent to about $70,000, or €65,000 today. In Paris, a receptionist at the hotel Maria had stayed at confirmed Maria had stayed there for one night, checking out on the 22nd of May. While she was there, an American in his 40s had met her at the desk, greeting her like an old friend. Police weren't able to find the flight she left on. It's possible she was traveling under an assumed name, or that she had simply slipped through the cracks. It's possible the airlines in the 1960s simply were not as security conscious as they are now. And then there came a break. Maria's brother in Puerto Rico had received a postcard sent on the 22nd of May from Orly Airport near Paris. where she said she was planning to visit London and Dublin. Under further questioning, Sarah remembered one Patrick Darcy. Patrick was questioned and admitted to knowing Virginia, but denied having seen her in several months. He was a travel agent who traveled frequently, but denied having left New York recently. New York police contacted their counterparts in London and Dublin, including photos and fingerprints of Maria. They were a match to the unnamed woman who washed ashore in Doolin. Her name was Maria Domenech. Getting from Dublin to the cliffs of Moher today is quite simple, but in the 60s it would have been a different story. Initially, it was believed that Maria had landed in Shannon Airport, which is much closer to the cliffs. Shannon is not a big airport, which means fewer passengers, so you can go through flight records much more quickly than you would at Dublin Airport. It also has fewer hotels, again narrowing down the search further. The discovery of Maria's true name had been kept secret to avoid tipping off her killer. Police used this extra breathing room to start their extensive search of flight and hotel records. One Mr. A. Young had booked into Shannon Hotel, but there was no flight records for Mr. Young in Shannon Airport. He had come to the hotel in a car, which was proven by garage records in the hotel. The hotel keeps records of car registrations, and the car under Young's name was traced to a car hire in Dublin. Young had rented the car on the 22nd and returned it on the 23rd. The clock registered that he had travelled 320 miles. The cliffs of Moher are approximately 300 miles from Dublin. Further investigation found that an A. Young and an M. Young had flown from Paris to London and then arrived in Dublin on the 22nd of May. Mr. Young would return to Paris on the 23rd. Miss Young would not. When you rent a car, you must provide certain details, including the home address. No one by the name Young lived at the address provided. For some reason, this man was travelling under a false name. It's possible and probable that Miss M. Young was doing the same. Travelling with someone requires a certain degree of trust. Maria was travelling on her own, and Young met her at the Parisian hotel after she had checked in on her own. She did not appear to be forced or coerced to travel with him. This implies that they knew each other. All the male friends of Maria and Virginia were investigated. None of them could have been in Ireland on the date in question. Sarah and Roberto both mentioned that Maria had been previously involved with an older man, but it ended when she found out he was married. Another friend of Maria confirmed Patrick Darcy was indeed this man. Darcy was a son of Irish immigrants who travelled extensively in Europe and knew his way around Ireland. He matched the description of the man who was seen with Maria before her death. He also had several passports in assumed names, including John J. Quinn and A. Young. He spent a lot of time in Miami and was probably involved in illegal activities, such as the drug trade. He also lied about being in New York at the end of May. Unfortunately, police in New York could only question him about the disappearance of Virginia until an extradition order from Ireland came through for Maria's murder. He eventually admitted to having left the US in late May, but denied any knowledge of Virginia's disappearance or Maria's death. Despite his repeated denials of being A. Young or being in Ireland at the time, his handwriting matched the signatures provided to the car hire and hotel in Ireland. Despite all of this, the police eventually had to let him go, and despite their constant surveillance, he managed to slip away on the 11th of October. In Miami, under his assumed name of John J. Quinn, Darcy checked into the McAllister Hotel. He downed a bottle of barbiturates and washed them down with a bottle of whiskey. He left 2 suicide notes. Neither of them revealed anything. Maria's body was disinterred and buried in her native Puerto Rico. Virginia has never been found. It has never been explained why Maria was travelling with Darcy or why she was travelling under an assumed name. Her trip was not a secret. Both her brother, mother, and mother's friend Sarah knew about it. She went to her hotel in Paris alone. Darcy came looking for her and met her at the front desk. She sent several letters and postcards, including at least one while she was in his presence at the airport. As stated earlier, they did have a prior relationship that ended when she found out he was married. Perhaps this relationship had continued in secret or had recently restarted. It's possible that she's booked the trip through his agency and he would, coincidentally, be in Paris at the same time and offered to show her around the City of Lights. Or maybe the whole thing was a way for them to be together, away from prying eyes. This does not explain why she was travelling under an assumed name. M. Young. Darcy travelled under A. Young. Perhaps it was a way to pose as a married couple and avoid awkward questions about their relationship. In my research, I found that very few people have written about the case. However, there was one very interesting story from a man writing under the username Dan the Deck. In this theory, Marie and Darcy were involved in the drug trade. Darcy was all in, but apparently Marie was secretly working with American law enforcement to gather evidence. Her prior relationship with him gave her an easy in. But somewhere along the way, someone found out her secret and killed her for it. According to this story, 2 well-known mafia hitmen were dispatched to Ireland, and she was thrown from a helicopter to her death. Her mother was also killed to keep the secret. And Darcy either committed suicide to escape the police, or to escape the criminals, or was killed and made to look like a suicide. While it is an incredible theory, there are holes. The first hole is the helicopter. As stated earlier, there was a suspicious helicopter in the area around the time of her death, but this was proven to be unrelated. It's possible there was a second helicopter that did the deed, but helicopters were not common sights at the time, and it would have been noticed. Secondly, the story has several mistakes, confusing the names of Maria and her mother, stating that the FBI, a federal agency, was investigating a European crime, not the CIA, and states the 2 well-known mafia hitmen were able to leave the US, enter Ireland, and return to the US without any major issues. Personally, a well-known hitman sounds like an oxymoron. He also says that Maria was an FBI agent, and everywhere else I looked said she was a social worker along with her mother, and this includes the official report from An Garda Síochána. His theory also completely ignores the evidence found at O'Brien's Tower. It's possible Dan Deck or his sources made a mistake, confusing one alphabet agency for another. But there's too many mistakes for me to personally sign off on this. It's quite possible that there is some truth to this theory. It would explain why she was traveling under an assumed name. But unfortunately, as great a story as it is, I feel comfortable personally dismissing it as idle gossip and half-remembered rumours. We will probably never know why Darcy killed Maria, or why she was travelling with him in the first place. What we do know is their names were Maria and Virginia Domenech. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all like the story. It's an interesting case, even without introducing the theories towards the end. I really hope I pronounce everyone's name correctly. Unfortunately, Puerto Rican names are not my forte. I'm recording this Sunday night. It's a beautiful day, beautiful evening outside. I hope everyone listening is safe and healthy. It's a weird time. It's a scary time. But we are all in it together. Stay together. Stay inside. Listen to your experts. Watch your neck. We will get through this, and we are going to get through it together. And before I go, always remember, the dead have names.